Hello, thank you for stopping by the channel. Today I bring to you a great first-person shooter that I used to play a ton in the 90s. It's called Blood. This particular release includes the original Blood game and 2 expansion packs. The compilation was developed by Monolith Productions and released in '98. The original game, before the other expansions came out, was released in '97. I'm running this one on DosBox, and that's on a Windows 10 machine. And when you're loading this game, it takes a while to actually install. It's a little alarming. But this was old school DOS, and loading took a while, and often it caused space problems. This came out back at a time when you could install 2 games onto your hard drive, and if you wanted to play something else, you had to make a choice to start deleting stuff. It's one of those DOS games where you need to run a setup program before you actually run the program. It's not something that's completely integrated with the game, and it's pretty common actually back then. There are some settings in the game, but not all of them. This sort of puts you in a spot, at least initially, where you might have to load and start the game and then close the program just to run the setup utility again, and you have to go back and forth to configure things the way you want to make sure it's going to run properly. Back in the 90s, systems, especially audio cards, they could be very different from one another, and you had to worry about all these drivers, all these different configurations. Once you get through these initial setup steps, though, you're off to the races. This game isn't as bad as some others. Blood is one of the many Doom-style games that came out of the 90s, and it's really good. I find a lot of games in this style, in this era, they try to differentiate themselves, first with weapons, and then it's usually a matter of the little details that they sort of insert as well, like, I don't know, a room that has a pixelated Elvira poster. This caught my eye right away. It's a classic horror movie staple, a classic image, and I think this is an amazing addition to have in the game. It's an homage to horror fans. Now for games like this, you also hope for good level design, right? I think this game works across the board as a first-person shooter. Level design, the way it handles, all that stuff. Early on, it's particularly difficult, though, or at least in the difficulty that I selected. It does get easier when you finally get a shotgun, or at least a little easier. In the level designs, there tend to be lots of hidden items and areas, and it's definitely worth trying to find these, because they usually result in more ammunition or items, which are things you really need. I suppose that's one of the things that separates this one from some other games, too. You can have items. You can store certain things and use them, like you'll pick up a health pack, and it doesn't necessarily trigger right away. It goes into your inventory, and you press the enter key if you want to trigger it. Or at least that's how I have it configured. You might configure it to something else. But it's nice to be able to store these things up and use them later. In this one, you play a badass with a hat. You got a duster, dark glasses apparently, and a desire for vengeance against some sort of a demon that tried to kill you. There is a rendered scene at the start of the game, and it's reminiscent of 90s graphic renderings, but the goal here is just to give you an excuse for this chaos, really. You're killing a whole bunch of occult-type creatures as you make your way through the levels. You're going to fight rats, zombies, different types of cultists, demons, stuff like that. You start the game by waking up in a tomb, and you've been left for dead. Well, you're alive, and you're ready to go kill as many baddies as you can. Eventually, you're going to get a full arsenal of weapons, but it's going to take you a while to get them all. Like most games of this style and era, there are plenty of cheat codes available to get you weapons and health if you really get stuck. But at the end of the level, when you get there, it's going to tell you that you cheated. Still, you're paying for the game, so play it how you want. I've been going through this one straight. I employed cheats just to take a look at the extra weapons, but I've been playing this one straight through, and it ain't easy. I've also been quick saving frequently. You can go from full health to dead fast. So saving and plotting out how you're going to go through a level is a good idea. You can go through your ammunition quick if you're not careful. More than Doom, I think, at least in the early levels of the game, they really make you conserve your ammunition. If you don't, you're going to run out, and killing everybody at the end of a level with the handheld weapon just isn't feasible. Your handheld weapon in this game is the pitchfork, and although it isn't the most fun weapon to do damage, it's unique, it looks cool, and it feels appropriate to the game. The most basic handgun you have is a flare gun, which is something I find to be kind of memorable and hilarious at the same time. You can shoot a zombie or cultist with a flare, and you can watch the shot stick, and if you wait 2 seconds, they catch on fire and die screaming. It's great. It's also a really efficient use of ammunition if you get the shot right. It basically becomes one shot is one kill, and if you can survive the 2 seconds it takes them to light on fire, fantastic, just run around and don't get shot. When this happens, if the target was a zombie, they're going to just howl in pain, but if it's a cultist, they're going to scream, "It burns, it burns!" It's great horror stuff. For me, the game really starts to get exciting when you get the shotgun. I think that's somewhere on the second level. You get a sawed-off double-barrel shotgun, and it packs a pretty good punch. But they made it so it's not perfect. In Doom, when you get the shotgun, you can use that sucker for pretty much everything. It takes over in place of the pistol. But here, it's just a step above the flare gun, but it doesn't work the same against all enemies. For something that appears right in front of you, you know, that jumps out, sure, you're going to use it. It's a good way to say hello to somebody. But a shotgun versus a cultist, that's probably 2 shots and not a problem. A shotgun versus a zombie? The first shot puts them down, but then they get back up, and then you have to shoot them again. Then they get up again. So it takes multiple shots for a zombie to stay down, and that isn't the most effective use of ammunition. And ammunition isn't plentiful, so switching to the flare gun to kill a zombie is probably better. Definitely more efficient, and that's a thing for this game. The machine gun is next. I think it's a Tommy gun, and it's pretty fun if you have the ammunition, but you can go through that quick if you're not careful. You get other interesting weapons, of course. There's a napalm launcher, a dynamite bundle, that's kind of common. And there's a spray can and a lighter that you basically use as a flamethrower. There's also some sort of a laser rifle that is really something you'd expect from Doom. There are also 2 magic items. There's a stick with the skull on it. It's this voodoo-looking thing. And I think it's called the Life Leech. It shoots fireballs, or you can actually mount it in the ground and use it as a turret. That's a thing here too. Most of these weapons have 2 types of fire. And the alternate fire, some are certainly more useful than others. They obviously use more ammunition, but they could be useful in certain situations. You can also get a voodoo doll, and that's kind of clever. And if you stab it with the pin, you can kill your enemies in the distance. It's a clever little item to use, and it gives you something different than what you'd expect. I like that. As far as the levels go, for the most part, they're pretty clever. They're totally sufficient here. I think they made some really interesting choices, and they just feel right, and they feel different. On the 3rd or 4th level, you're fighting on a moving train. You're fighting from car to car. If you look out the windows, you can watch the scenery pass by. It's a great effect. And if the window has the curtain closed, you can open the curtain and watch. It's just unique. It's great. It's these little details that matter. You also eventually get to this fantastic adventure through a carnival. I think it's fantastic. It's the little details that they include. They're just great. Little posters on the walls. You can read some of them. There are carnival booths. There are various attractions you walk through. There are mimes standing around in the middle of the chaos. They just did a good job decorating this one. It's fun. It's amusing. There's a poster for monkey wrestling. And they also apparently have Jojo the Monkey Boy. When you see this sign, your guy starts chanting. It's hilarious. I guess that's also one of the things that pops up in this game from time to time. This game has digital audio clips. They play in very specific places. Maybe it's not a big deal by today's standards, but this was way back. Back in the 90s, yeah, this was a deal here. Maybe you're going to be standing around, or you'll interact with a certain object. Your character will say something snappy. Something kind of clever. Doesn't happen every moment, but when they do, it's pretty fun. I think it's a little like Duke Nukem in this regard. We get a total of, I think, 35 levels in this game, and that's before you start getting into the expansion packs, which give you another 19 levels, I believe. The second expansion also modifies some of the weapons, I believe, but I haven't gotten that far in this one yet. So, if you're a Doom fan, which I think many people are, Blood is probably worth your time. It's important to know it's not a controller game, at least my version isn't. It's straight up keyboard and mouse combo. I'm playing off a DOS disk, that's probably why. I'm willing to bet that if you were to buy this on GOG or Steam, it's possible they have controller support. Well, that's all I have today for Blood for DOS. I love this game. It's a ton of fun. It's super clever. Well, thanks for stopping by to take a look. Hope you found it interesting, and hope to catch you on another video.